Everyone. I am about to do a live IG live with my friend Holistic Hilda, who was one of the first guests on my podcasts when I started 2 years ago. And Hilda has the most amazing podcast. It's called the Weston A. Price Foundation. It's Wise Traditions. And it's probably the only podcast that I listen to without fail every week. So stay tuned here while we get Hilda on the line. Feel free to ask lots of questions. I'm going to keep my glasses on so that I can actually read your questions. So Hilda is somebody I honestly just greatly admire. She posted something the other day about self-compassion, and I just think it's super interesting because I don't often have a lot of self-compassion. And she was talking specifically about how she had stayed up too late over the last couple of weeks and then just was, kind of slow and tired and all of those things. And here she
Hey,
is, and you're
Deborah, how are
looking.
you?
I am great. I was just talking about how your post yesterday really inspired me about self-compassion and about how you had stayed up too late. And I thought back to over the holidays where we were up so late with our kids, and it was such beautiful time with the family, but then the next day I just felt like I was dragging, and I finally just said, then you drag, like,
Yes,
you had great family time.
absolutely. So in life, I just think we have a tendency to beat ourselves up when we make mistakes and what our family calls self-sabotage, right? Where maybe you
Mm-hmm.
ate too much or you made some choices that weren't the best. And I think that just pummels you further into the ground. It doesn't help
It
to beat yourself up.
doesn't.
You already feel guilty. You already feel dragging around, especially if you compromised on some health goals of yourselves or whatever. So I say, why don't we extend the compassion that we would extend to someone else, saying, hey, it makes sense. You were with your family. Or in my case, I was working on a podcast that kept me up late. And I was purposely doing it because I was going away. My husband reminded me, like, you always have all these goals to get things done before you leave town. And
Mm-hmm.
so it was lovely to offer myself grace. And I want to say this in the health and wellness space, because as you know, more than most, our spirits affect our well-being also. It's not just the food that we eat. It's everything about ourselves. That's why we're multifaceted beings and we need to pay attention to what our spirit is feeling like.
That's really true. And we neglect that. It's so often where we just think that we're just one dimensional. And that couldn't
Mhm.
be farther from the truth. I mean, our spiritual, our the negative self-talk we're saying to ourselves impacts us on such a huge level.
Absolutely. And we can get kind of orthorexic, as they say, about our diet sometimes. And that's worse than taking in food that, let's say, is not organic or not made with the perfect oils, but taking it in with gratitude. So again, I want to encourage
Mm,
anybody on this live and you as well, and me too, because we're always talking to ourselves as well. Like, it's okay if you make different choices. Offer yourself grace as you do so, and receive what you're getting with joy. So I wasn't actually disgruntled in them, although maybe I was a little bit when I was working on the podcast, but sometimes it's after the fact when you're like, oh no, but it's like, hey, I really did think to myself, if I went back in time, would I change what I did? And no, actually I wouldn't. So if you made that choice, then it was the
oh,
right choice for you at that time. And I travel a lot. So, Deborah, I actually do compromise on my dietary choices. Someone asked me on a podcast recently, they were like, do you always choose organic? And I would say 100% when I'm home. But when
mhm.
I'm on the road, I just get the best there is, whether I'm in someone's home or just trying to make do while I'm traveling. And I just always receive it with gratitude because that spirit affects how my digestion and how my absorption of the nutrients is going
Yeah.
to go.
Well, and that brings me to another question. I flew last night and I didn't bring my metal water bottle like I would always do. And I was at the Seattle airport and I was just so anyway, I bought a plastic water bottle and the whole time I'm drinking it, I'm like, oh, I know, like all this crap is going in. So So, what advice do you have for people about traveling? I mean, I love your
Yes.
travel hacks, but
Yes.
sometimes you just blow it. And so I guess there's that opportunity for self compassion and grace again.
Absolutely. Because I do follow someone online who's like, no matter how thirsty I am, I will never drink water from a water bottle, which is
Hmm,
a very admirable choice she's making. And I don't mean to make
sure.
it sound like, it's haughty, but I don't go that way. And when I am drinking from a plastic water bottle, because it does happen, you can't take water through security.
Yeah,
So then you're on the other side and you're like, what do I do? Right. So I
right.
often will buy water in a water bottle and I literally just say thank you to the water because
Hmm.
as you know, there was a Japanese doctor, Emoto, I believe his name is, and he did some studies, and even speaking to water changes its structure, which means it changes its ability to be absorbed by our cells. So
Hmm.
you want kind of happy, structured water that looks like geometrically perfectly shaped. And when you speak bad things to the water, it gets chaotic, just like our spirits,
Right.
right? So we want to speak good things. So when I'm drinking it, I'm not thinking, BPA, here we go.
I know
I
all those
think
nanoplastics
I know,
going
because
into my body.
you know too much, Deborah. You know too much.
we
So I
both
just
we
think, thank
both
you.
know too much.
But I say to the water, thank you,
Yeah.
And I do think, I always think back to what my friend Tommy John says, which,
Hmm.
better a happy donut than a sad salad. And his point is
Oh.
take what you eat and take everything in with gratitude as
Hmm.
opposed to angst and fear, because that's not going to get
Hmm.
you anywhere.
Okay, let's pause for a second. Take everything in with gratitude. Better a happy donut than a sad salad.
Yes.
Oh my
And I don't even eat donuts.
gosh.
I don't even eat
Uh,
donuts, but that's the idea.
right. But I love that because that is the ultimate in grace and compassion toward your body and your cells is to just, again, I'm walking through the airport, I'm smelling all of the perfume and all the fake fragrances and all the things. And I'm just like cringing, like, well, I'm just going to detox tomorrow. And you know what? God made my body to detox right now. So why don't I just take some deep breaths? Why don't I just put on my happy face and just be grateful? And the things that I'm putting in or inhaling are going to do a better job in my body versus me just like white knuckling it and saying, oh, I'm drinking plastic.
I know what you mean. I literally also flew yesterday. So all the fumes and just forget the perfumes when you're on
Oh,
the plane. I feel like there's this
gosh.
jet bleed thing going on. Now I do have, and I'm not an affiliate or anything, but I do actually sometimes wear a mask that's a coconut carbon filter mask, which
Mm,
filters out the jet bleed fumes. Because I always feel like airports smell
they
funny, and I used to
do.
always get off the plane. I'm like, I do not feel 100%. I'd have a little headache or a little nausea, and
Right.
I never knew that was. It could have been the fact that we're exposed to more atmospheric radiation on the plane, of course, but I suspected some of
Hmm.
the other air that's just being circulated through there. So I sometimes wear this little mask. I think I get it from a website called icanbreathe.com or something like
Okay.
that. Super simple. This woman literally like sews the masks on a sewing machine, but I trust them and I like to wear that now and then, which is funny because of course I didn't like to wear masks when they were mandated. But
Yeah.
but I want to
Same.
avoid the toxins and there is a lot of stuff. So
Right.
I say at the very least you could always just kind of also grab a scarf and just go like this because that stuff oof, it just doesn't make you feel good.
It
But
doesn't. Yeah.
speaking of feeling good, so what I do try to do is the things I know are helpful. So I generally fast on the flight, so I'm not
Hmm.
causing an extra challenge for my digestive system
Okay.
on the flight. So I won't eat when I'm flying. Of course, I try to stay hydrated and either put some droplets of minerals in my water or do what I
Okay.
can to especially magnesium which is can be depleted when we fly so I
Hmm.
do little things like that but mostly I try to just travel with joy and get a few things done on the plane that make me feel like hey okay I checked something off.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's good. And travel with joy.
Mm.
You and I have been in this industry for a long time. And there are times when you mentioned earlier, we know too much. And so we can approach, going to the mall over the holidays and, there's perfume sprayed everywhere and all the, Glade plugins and, all those things where I'm just like, and then I just thought, okay, but my, is impacting my interactions with other people. So let it go. Me smelling somebody's perfume is not, going to take me out for the rest of the day.
No.
Luckily, I don't get migraines or anything like that, but it's really approaching life with, a little more gratitude and
Yes.
a lot more grace. Yeah.
Yes. And also one thing, this I didn't do this on purpose this past trip, but maybe I did. I don't know. I kind of am trusting my
Mm-hmm.
intuition a lot in 2024. But basically, I I have some rocks that I travel with, which sounds funny, but you and I both know that when you put your feet on the ground,
Mm-hmm.
you unload your kind of non-native electromagnetic frequency radiation burden,
Yep.
and the earth takes that and replaces it with negative ions, which also can attach to free radicals. So you're lowering your incidence of cancer, you're lowering your stress levels, you're
Mm-hmm.
um, really bringing your body back into this parasympathetic
Yep.
mode. So I do travel with rocks, but not like fancy crystals. I literally mean like EMF rocks. I have a little bag that I bought from this guy, Justin Franzen, I think his name is. And I just feel like it has to counteract some of the artificial stuff because I'm like, okay, I've got
Mm-hmm.
real rocks with me. So there's something about that that I find kind of grounding too.
That is really a cool idea. I mean, usually when I get to my destination, I take my shoes off, I go
Yes.
outside, and it doesn't take long. It doesn't take long to just feel like you've reconnected with the earth. You're dumping the junk. Your body is absorbing those great negative ions. And it just really,
Mhm.
for me, it really helps to reset my compass. Also getting in, a natural body of water is fantastic. Yeah.
Yes, of course, of course. I haven't done that since I got back, but yeah, I mean it's there's something very artificial, let's face it, about being in one place and then like in the next 3 hours being like all the way across the country. Like our
Yeah.
ancestors definitely didn't do that.
Right.
They traveled by horse or even by train where they could see the landscape and take their
Mm-hmm.
time to transition. And all of a sudden we're jet setting, right? We end up somewhere completely different. So you're right, simple things like putting our feet in the ground, getting in a body of
Mm-hmm.
water. I always try to see the sunlight. Like I don't just jump into an Uber and go to my hotel. I try to get acclimated and tell my body, okay, you're in a new place.
Oh,
And generally it does work.
okay.
Yeah. So what I
I
mean by
love that.
working is I adapt pretty quickly that way.
Yeah, and you travel a lot and you
Yeah.
would have to adapt pretty quickly.
Yeah.
How do you sleep in different time zones? And then you come home after being gone for a week and how do you get that? How do you do a big reset
Yes.
there?
Well, my first secret is never look back. So I've traveled with people who are like, well, it's really 3 p.m. back home. I'm like, no, la,
I
la, la,
know.
la, la.
Yeah, I
I
don't
don't
want to
want to
hear
hear
that.
it. Once you go, just commit to that time. I changed my watch. I literally
Mm,
have an analog watch for fun, but
mm-hmm.
I changed my watch on the plane and I don't look back. I act as if I were in the new time zone right away. I'm
Hmm.
sure there are more hacks than that. Like, I'm sure you could start thinking of that a couple days ahead of time, but I never
Mm-hmm.
get that far ahead. So I'm in
Right.
my time zone until I'm not, and then I'm prepared in the new place. I also, one way to sleep better is to not eat too close to bedtime. This is
Mm,
a long time bit of advice or hack that's been around for a while, but I found it to be really helpful because, again, when you're digesting, it's work for the body, and that can disrupt your sleep. So I try not to eat
mm-hmm.
several hours before bed. That helps me too. And then, of course, in the new time zone, getting the sunrise sun. So let's say, and I really was just in Arizona. So the sunrise is at 7:30 there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very different than the time it would be back home, but it doesn't matter. I'm up with the sun. I get outside within 30 to 45 minutes of sunrise, and that helps sync me in the new rhythm too. And it's okay if I'm tired earlier because I feel like, well, then I'll just go to bed earlier. Like I'm
Mm-hmm.
listening to my body too. I'm not
Right.
I'm not fighting it, but I'm trying to like acclimate it. And I need these tips and tricks, Deborah, because I'm going to Colorado soon. And this is exactly what I have to do when I get in bodies of ice water, or when I go on my shiver walks, which I do. Like I have to prepare myself and say, this is what I'm here for. This is what I
Mm-hmm.
came for. And even though it's challenging, um, like I know my body is ready for it. But I also, so it's a kind of a fine line, I would say, between helping your body along the way
Mm-hmm.
and listening to it. You're not trying to force it, I guess I would say, but you
Yeah.
are working with it in a natural way so that it can prepare itself for
Hmm.
wherever you're at.
Have you always had such body awareness?
Oh, that is a very good question. I feel like, I got into this space at first as a fitness professional. So I
Hmm.
taught exercise classes all the
Yep,
time.
me too.
So, oh yeah, that's so funny. So,
Hmm.
I think I was mostly aware of how much I weighed at the time. It's
I know.
embarrassing, but I really
Right.
would look at the scale and I was like, okay, smiley face if I'm 110, frowny, frowny if I'm 113. Like it was
It
crazy.
was
But now I
crazy.
say
Uh,
scales are for fish. I really don't care what I weigh. Actually,
yeah.
I would rather be healthy and strong than skinny and unhealthy.
Yeah.
So I always say strong is the new skinny or whatever.
Right.
So that's what I'm shooting for. So I think I was aware back then of my weight, but I wasn't always listening or as attuned as I am now. And now
Hmm.
I also give myself grace that, I don't know, let's just say, for example, sometimes I try to fast until midday, try to
Hmm.
shrink my eating window. They say that's really healthy and good. But if I'm hungry, I'm like, oh, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and eat because
Right.
I'm listening to my body. I'm not just trying to, again, force
Right.
it into what everyone else says is right. I love the saying, I think Tommy John says this, and R.D. Code, the author of the Mitochondriac
Hmm.
Manifesto, he said N equals one, meaning forget all the other studies. You see what works for you. Don't even compare yourself to Deborah or to Hilda or to anyone else.
Hmm.
You see, how do I feel by shrinking my eating window? How do I feel by doing a shiver walk? Is this invigorating to me or do I hate it? Because that will be a clue as to what your body wants and needs.
So it sounds like your body coaches you and you coach your body. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. All right, so it's just because I love to talk and because we're having fun and we're honest with each other. I always am honest, but let me just say, I'm going to tell you something I haven't told anybody
Oh,
yet. I
do
can't believe this.
you tell? It's
So,
just you and me.
okay, okay. And whoever all watches this later and
Yeah.
is watching now. Hi there, by the way. Thank you for
Hi,
watching.
everybody.
So get ready for this truth bomb. But so I interviewed Dr. Bradley Nelson of the Emotion Code.
Ooh.
He also wrote the Body Code.
Hmm.
I interviewed him, I don't know, maybe a year ago or
Hmm.
something. And he said, and you might have heard of this before, you can do a body sway test. So just like some people might see a specialist or a naturopath and have them do a muscle test, you
Hmm.
can do this yourself. So just to tell the uninitiated, a muscle test is if you are wondering if you're allergic to something, for example, or even is this homeopathic remedy good for me? So the doctor would put in one hand, let's say astragalus or something, and then they test your body strength. And then they let you know, oh, yes, you're responding well, you can handle that, or no, your body doesn't like it.
Hmm.
And so Dr. Bradley Nelson said, you can do this test with anything. So right now I have a glass of water and I can literally ask my body, like, do you want this? And I'll loosen up my muscles. And if I lean forward, it means yes, my body was just leaning forward. So lately,
Oh,
Deborah, in the grocery store, I've
wow.
been letting my body coach me. I will grab something, and let's say it's grain free, organic granola. And so I'll grab it, and my body is always like swaying back. And I'm like, but no,
But I
because
want
you seem,
this.
yeah, you seem tasty. But my body's like, no. And so mostly, I do listen to it. And I just
Hmm.
say mostly because sometimes I don't test, so I don't really know. But in the store, especially, I'm sure people think it's weird, but you can try this at home, even with whatever's in your
Wow.
cabinet right now.
Okay.
You grab something, you relax yourself, and you say,
Hmm.
should I have this or do I want this? And your body will either slightly
Hmm.
sway forward or slightly sway back. It's
Hmm.
very interesting.
I'm
And
doing it right
you'll,
now with my water.
okay.
Yes.
Hey,
Yeah.
isn't that interesting? So
Hmm.
you relax. And sometimes if you're like not even sure if your body's telling you the right thing, you can even ask your body, is this a good time to test? So it's good at answering yes, no questions because it's forward and back.
Oh.
And then you will proceed with whatever foods you might try. But it's very interesting to me. And the one thing I only have regrets about right now is peanut butter, which I always know. They say it's high in mycotoxins and mold and it's
Right.
not really good for
Right.
you, but I've always liked the taste of
I,
it. But
I do
whenever I check with
too.
my body, it's like, don't have it. And I'm like, okay, I hear you. So I don't.
Yeah. Yeah. That is so interesting because our body knows what it needs. It does. So if you're craving salty, there's a reason why you're craving salty. If
Yep,
you're craving crunchy or you're craving, just a great steak, there is a reason to eat those things.
I think
Yeah.
so. I think so. The body knows on a much more profound level because we get very cerebral, right? Like, oh, I just saw that Max Lugavere post and he said this, and so we're
Hmm.
like, we take it in from these, 30, 40 something guys, and they're not
They're
us.
not
So we need to
us.
really, I mean, we can try it, but N equals one, try it and see how the body responds, or even ask your body, what do you think?
Hmm.
It's just a whole new way of approaching wellness, I
It
think.
is. It is. So how do you, when you work with somebody and they just say, I have zero body awareness. I don't know what my body wants. I don't know what I should eat. I don't know what time I should go to bed. Where's a good place for people to start where they can start to communicate between this and this?
Oh, that is such a great question. And I can't pretend that I have all the answers, Deborah,
Mm-hmm.
honestly, on that. I haven't worked with clients who are in that degree of, I guess I would say, separation. But
Mm-hmm.
um, one thing that occurs to me, and I think it's just because I'm reading it, I'm reading Rudolf Steiner's book called Knowledge of Attainment of Higher Worlds.
Ooh.
And basically, he says you do need to reconnect with the natural world to expect to kind of grow spiritually. It's a very profound book. I'm not recommending it to everyone, but apparently to everyone
Mm-hmm.
who's watching us right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess I would say if you connect a little bit more with nature, so take a
Mm-hmm.
morning walk before you start tackling your emails or start scrolling, all these
Right.
devices engage and entertain us, but they don't allow us the space we need to reflect and to be. And we're human beings after all. So I would
Mm-hmm.
say connect more with nature. And as you do so, you might find yourself more attuned not only with nature but with yourself. That's what
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to do, and I think it's working a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think the more we can get
Yes.
outside, I mean, we're spending 93% of our time indoors now. And that's not just because it's winter. That's what people do now. And I grew up on a farm in Northern California. I was outside all the time. And I don't feel good inside. And that's just from my childhood. But we're raising children who are just so used to being inside all the time because it's a place of safety, you know?
And
That's
they're
also
missing the green.
dangerous.
They need the
Mm,
green over the screens, but we do too. So I'm so glad you said that. It's not just the children, it's us too. So part of it is in the Western world, a lot of our work is inside on screens. So I say
mhm.
take a sun break. Like I make sure to get out first thing and then in the middle of the day and at night. So at least 3 times a day you can
Oh,
do it. And
good.
it's
Okay.
really, it's, well, of course, it helps if you have a dog, which I do.
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
But even your kids, and if you find, if you're a young mama right now watching this and you're like, oh, there are times I just want to scream or pull my hair out, that's when you open the screen door and say, we're going out right now. The
Hmm.
kids don't mind, although they might complain at first. But once you get them out there, you'll all feel a change in dynamic. You're
Hmm.
shifting the mood. I just interviewed for the Wise Traditions podcast, Ginny Urich, I think it is, who wrote the book A Thousand Hours Outside. And she
Ooh.
gives a lot of great tips. I think this one's coming out later this month. She gives a lot of great tips for helping overcome that obstacle of kind of inertia that hits when you're working inside
Hmm.
or when you're inside with the kids and you're washing laundry and you're just kind of doing all these things and everyone's cooped up. And whether it's winter, summer, spring, or fall, like we need to get outside, you're right. And I think that will help us tune in with the rhythms of nature and consequently with the rhythms of our own bodies.
Right. I think so too. The amazing thing is you can go outside for less than 5 minutes and it will
It doesn't have to be long.
it doesn't have to be long. I'm not saying you need to do a 5 mile hike, but just go outside, look toward the sun,
Yes.
do a little bit of a walk. I mean, it's absolutely amazing. And I'm very into lymphatic flow. And I just wrote an article for the Costco Connection in January about lymphatic flow, and just getting up and moving a little bit can do wonders for that. And I think a lot of people just don't know, like, what is this lymphatic system?
I
What is it doing for
know.
us?
Well, this is what I say. In a way, I feel like you don't even have to know because you can just experience it.
Hmm.
So you might know about more about the lymphatic system than I do, but what I do know is you're right. Moving about is better than being still. And our
Right,
bodies were designed to move, not to just be sitting at this, 90-degree angle with the hips and the legs and stuff. So
right.
I do. I've witnessed it, of course, in every culture I visited. The people are active,
Hmm.
and because why? Because they're environment and their day-to-day work involves movement, going to the river to get water or
Hmm.
threshing the grain. I literally saw this in Ethiopia this past summer. So since if your work is sedentary, it really, your health and life depends upon your movement. And you're exactly right, Deborah. I'm not saying Like if you have a company that's like paying attention to every minute, you have to go outside for 3 hours. You can simply walk around the corridors. And believe me, I did this. I do recommend getting outside, but in terms of movement, I do this even on the airplane. I think it drives people crazy, but they think I'm going to the restroom and then I don't. And I keep going back and forth.
Me
But
too.
I'm like, I want to keep moving. Sometimes in the
Yeah.
restroom itself, I will do squats, but that's another
Yeah.
story and maybe TMI. But you know, we have to keep the circulation going, and the lymphatic
Right.
system is a part of that.
Yeah. Yeah. People think I'm crazy on airplanes because I'm doing my arm movements and I'm walking up and down the aisle. And, I'll throw this out to you because I'm sure this is not the first time you've heard this, but, you and I have probably been accused of being woo woo. What do you say to us being woo woo?
I embrace it. I embrace it. And
Yeah.
actually, no one has ever said that to my face, but woo woo to me sounds like a lot of fun. It's like, hey, woo 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 woo. So I'm gonna
Love
embrace it.
that.
And
Love that.
honestly,
Yeah.
I also feel like once you taste the good life, you know, you can't go back. I have to tell you, Deborah, since we were talking about being on planes, I go down the aisle, nearly everyone is on
Oh,
their
yeah.
device. And I don't think they realize that that's part of their diet too. What you take in with
Right.
your eyes and your ears. And they're all watching. Like I saw an image yesterday. I'm only going to repeat this once because I never want to think about it again. But the
Mm-hmm.
woman was watching something on her screen and somebody had a gun to their head in the show she was watching. And
Ah,
I thought, how horrible. I don't want to
mm,
watch that. That's like
mm-mm.
junk food, but for the brain. I'm not
Right.
judging these people. They're all making their own choices, but I would rather be thinking or creating or reading on the plane. I do
Right.
not want to be watching someone else's agenda and taking that in. So if you want to call me
Mm-hmm.
woo woo, I say, you know, come join the party or just let me
Right.
be, you know.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, you said a lot of people think you're crazy, but I think some people might be slightly, I'm hoping, slightly envious, thinking, gosh, why don't I do that? I'm trapped here in the B
Right.
seat, so I can't do that right now. But they make excuses or reasoning why they can't.
Mm-hmm.
But I say, if you can, do it and then let the chips fall where they may.
Yeah. And I love being woo woo. I've been called woo woo for the last 30 years, and that is just fine. I embrace it. You're right. We're more fun. But
Yes.
that aside, I think just when I think about being woo woo, I think I live a life like my grandparents lived, which means I'm not watching a lot of TV. I'm outside working the land. I make eye contact with people. I'd rather call you than text you. I want to connect with people. And even when I get maybe a little bit wound up and I have a tendency to just kind of do, nose to the grindstone when I'm on a deadline. But what I'm really feeling this year is take the time to connect and press into other people, learn their stories and have a conversation with them and make eye contact. And that's been really fun.
Oh, that's amazing. And it's so rare in this day and age.
Yeah.
I was talking to a friend of mine who works with teenagers and they take them to camp. And so that the young people will engage in the camp, they take away their phones. And she said, it's really hard for them. It's really hard for
Mm-hmm.
them. They don't know what to do. They don't know where to look. They literally don't know what to do. And there are, you know, there's parasailing at these camps. There's all kinds of activities. There's hot tubs and game rooms. And they're like, looking around because they're so used to looking like this. So it's a lost art, and
Wow.
I'm glad you're leaning
Hmm.
into it. And I just
Hmm.
thought of if someone ever does call me woo woo, I'm going to say, I have not yet begun to woo.
Oh,
Because
there you
I'm just on
go.
the edge of woo woo,
You
baby.
are,
Like,
baby.
I feel like there's so much to explore. I'm really, between the book I just told you I'm reading and some others, I'm like, whoa, like mind blown about
Mm-hmm.
who we are and this beautiful planet we're on. And I just feel like the learning process continues. So I'm grateful to like you said, dig into my intuition, dig into connection in a very real and
Mm-hmm.
vibrant way that is ancient wisdom, really. This is why I love
It
the wise
is.
traditions folks that I'm connected with, because it's like traditional, I mean, modern science is catching up to this traditional wisdom. That's why
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, you don't need to know the lymphatic system. You don't need to know XYZ. See how these things feel in your body, get more
Mm-hmm.
attuned to that, and you'll know the right way to go with your health choices.
Yeah. Yeah. Be it food, be it activity, be it not watching the news right before bed. I mean, I'm amazed at, I have so many people in my life who still do that. And I just think, Can you sleep with those images in
Oh
your head and
no.
the stories going into your brain? No, I just, yeah. So
Mm-mm.
I just don't, I don't, we are on a 24-hour news cycle. And, the news for the most part isn't good. I'm not, I'm not telling you anything that you're going to be surprised at. But do you really think God intended us to take in this much information on a daily basis?
Oh no. Oh no. And I can say this because the happiest people I've met on the earth are cut off from those news cycles you were describing. Their
Mm,
news is, I'm going to go take food to my aunt 2 huts over. And then I'm not
mm,
exaggerating. In Ethiopia, in these villages of people, especially in the Omo Valley where I was last year, um, their community is right there. Their news is what's happening right there. And it's so
really?
beautiful. So that the benefit of it is that they're not carrying the burden of what's happening halfway around the world. Like I
Hmm.
appreciate that people's have felt and there's been an outpouring of public sympathy for different parts of the world where there's war and natural disasters. In some ways, I see, okay, that builds compassion in us, but in other ways, we're carrying a burden that our grandparents would have never carried, our great grandparents.
Mm-mm.
They would have just known what was happening right where they were and wouldn't hear about such things until like maybe years later,
It's
if at
true.
all, right? And so there's
It's true.
something in that phrase of ignorance is bliss that I think it's a little bit much, and that's why I am informed to a degree, but it's the degree I choose. So what
Yeah.
happens sometimes, you guys, if you get your news from social media
Hmm.
or wherever else, is it's being curated for you, so you don't even always see what's coming at you, and you'll watch something, and before you know it, it's like gruesome, and you're like, why did I look at that?
Hmm.
So you have to be careful about the choices you make, because as I said, that's also part of your diet. It's part of your spiritual and emotional nourishment. So you have to pay
That
attention.
is.
I don't want to get all of those images in my mind and kind of in my subconscious forever. It's not a healthy thing. And Dr. Bradley Nelson actually talked about that on the episode I did with him as well. He said some people say your subconscious holds on to
Hmm.
every face, every image, everything you've ever encountered.
Hmm.
So that's why even horror movies, oh no, like you're not gonna
No,
catch me watching those.
no.
So think about what lifts up the spirit. This is one reason I listen to classical music instead of the news.
Hmm.
I used to read the newspaper, cover to cover, and until I realized it was getting me nowhere emotionally. So yeah, I've made some shifts to make sure to read books that uplift my spirit and so forth. And I think it's really, really helped me stay positive in a crazy,
Hmm.
crazy world.
No, I think that really makes a big difference. And when I think about news, if I see it and hear it, it stays in my system. If I choose how I get the news, and I might just read a little bit about it, I feel like I can detach a little bit more. So my kind
Mm.
of my outlook now is I want to know enough so I know how to be a blessing to people, to pray for people in
Mhm.
areas where there's terrible things that are happening, but not enough that it's going to keep me up at night. And I want to know, where can I put my money that is going to be, helping
Mhm.
people, different things like Convoy of Hope, or, where they're the first in. So I want to be aligned with charities like that, but I can't watch the 24-hour news cycle anymore. But I used to be highly addicted, and I'm
Yes, I
I'm
can
not
relate.
anymore. Yeah.
And when I interviewed Tommy John a while ago, I did an episode I called "You Heal You" because he says that you heal you. And
Mm-hmm.
one thing he says is the best way I can help people, even on the other side of the planet, is to show up as my most like meditated or prayed up,
Mm-hmm.
sunbathed, nourished, conscious self. That if I do that, somehow I believe, Deborah, that has a ripple effect even to the most war torn, distressed parts of the world. And that's better than my being burdened down and, kind of depressed in my spirit or anxious
Mm-hmm.
about what's happening. Because you're right, and you said it earlier, you said you were addicted. I think it's kind of drama
Yes.
adrenaline that comes into our system, and so it's as if it were happening to you. And so
Yeah.
that's what they say with horror movies and stuff too. Your cortisol spikes, your heart rate starts beating faster, and
Mm.
um that's not really healthy. You want to stay more in the parasympathetic mode, right? So that's
Right.
why I'll never forget when I did watch the last scariest movie I watched, I think was Life of Pi, and it wasn't even that scary. But sometimes when it comes to a scary moment, I try to remember, okay, it's just a movie, so that my body stays in that parasympathetic mode,
Mm-hmm.
because that's the mode in which you're most relaxed and your system's kind of working in its I mean, you can have the shoot of cortisol and get in the sympathetic mode, but you don't want to stay there.
Right.
So whether I'm watching a movie or the news or what have you, I want to take it kind of with equanimity so I can, be show up as my best self, like Tommy John said.
Right. Because really, I was at a conference last year and they were talking about, you know, maybe something, you know, really terrible happened to you 5 years ago. And when you replay it in your mind, your body thinks it's actually occurring in that moment and has those reactions. And that's one thing I've really been working on in the last
Mhm.
year is don't replay the negative stuff. And I used to, honestly, it was like in my mind, I'd pop a big bag of popcorn, pull up a chair, and look at all my bad memories for the day and how I could have done better. And I should have said this. And I thought, what am I doing to myself? It takes me 2 hours to go to sleep because I'm watching this film. So
Yes.
I have stopped that, which
Oh,
has
good.
been lovely and freeing. Yes, but it took a little while.
Well, I would imagine it would. My friend Sina McCullough, I think at one of the events we did at Polyface now and then we join up for these events at Joel's Farm. We're going to do one this June, as a matter of fact. But Sina taught me this little move. It's a literal move you do to kind of emotionally detox. So sometimes when you lay in bed, it's the
Mm-hmm.
first time you have a moment of quiet. And so all these thoughts start racing through your head of things you could have, should have said, or as we
Mm-hmm.
were saying at the top of this discussion, judging yourself and so forth. And Sina said, kind of like imagine you're kind of swiping it from your mind or from your heart and then jettison it away. And so sometimes when I have something on my heart or mind that's heavy, when
Mm-hmm.
I'm down in bed, I'll do this little swiping movement. And I kind of like it. If you are a believer in God, think of it as confession, but there's something about the physical movement to me that
Mm-hmm.
really helps me throw it away.
Yeah, and I actually do that too. And I'll do more of like a Pointer Sisters, like stop in the name of love. And I don't know why, but that seems to work for me. It's just like doing this, like this is not going to enter into my consciousness. And then it kind of makes me laugh because I'm singing in the shower or whatever it is. But there's something about the physical, just like, and we can end with this because I know we're out of time. But people can journal on their computers or their iPad, but I'm old school and I need to write on a pad of paper.
Yeah,
And for me, that makes all the difference. I feel like I get so much more out of it, the
I like
dumping
that as
process
well.
versus just writing it on a laptop.
Yes. My friend Andrea Beeman, she's amazing. I
Mm-hmm.
love her so much. And she says she journals out all the bad stuff. And I don't know if she crosses it off or crumples up the paper or just leaves it in her journal, but she's like, you have to find a way to detox that way too.
Yeah,
Because there is a lot of stuff. But I think the harshest, as I say, we are our harshest critic, And
we
so
sure are.
just remembering, and maybe you can acknowledge, okay, maybe I could have rephrased that or encountered that person
Mm-hmm.
differently, but then you have to like swipe it away, whether you journal it, do a
Mm-hmm.
move, or sing it
Yeah.
away. But I agree. I think that's really important because I think the theme of this conversation has almost been like the spirit does impact the body and vice versa. And so we need to
Mm-hmm.
lean in more to the things that are going to lift us up physically and spiritually and emotionally.
Yeah, it's really true. And gosh, I just have loved our time together. I was literally sitting in an airport last night and I was scrolling your page and I was watching about, the post yesterday about self-compassion. So that just, I thought, oh my gosh, this is our topic. This is our
Yes.
topic. I mean, we have no problem talking about things, but I thought that is such a great topic post holidays into all these, crazy New Year's resolutions that people make. But I
Mhm.
just want to say, Hilda, I have been so influenced by your work, your podcast. It's there's two podcasts I listen to every time they're released. The Bible Recap, which is a daily 8-minute read the Bible in a year, and your
Oh,
wise traditions. I have
oh,
learned so much. And I think why the wise traditions hit me so hard, your podcast, is that it reminds me of the way my grandparents lived and my great grandparents who were farmers in France. And it speaks to me. And I always walk away saying, oh my gosh, that was such a good one.
that makes me so happy. And you know what's
Yes.
so fun for me, Deborah, is that I feel like I have the privilege, as you do too, I'm sure, on your
Mm-hmm.
podcast. Like I get to learn as I go along. So I'm like,
Oh,
wait, I'm getting stuff out of this, and then other people are too. It makes me so
Right.
happy. And it recently occurred to me, I'm not only, aging, but I'm saging because of the podcast, and I'm really thankful.
Aging and saging. Okay, I'm right there with
Yes,
you, honey.
right?
Oh, thanks, Hilda, for coming on our IG Live. It was great to see
Oh, it's
you. Safe
good to
travels
see you
wherever you're going
too.
next.
I'm grateful that we're saging together, my friend, and
Me
you stay
too.
well.
Me too. I will.
All
Take
right, you too.
care. All right.
Bye bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye bye.